Alright, I've got my soldering iron, my screwdriver, some various metal parts that I need to make so I can do some plastic welding today. Because, check this out. Look at that. Looks impossible to fix, right? Probably is. Let's see if we can do it. I'll need my grinder, because I need to shape a couple of these pieces so I can make some welding pieces. Then we're going to see if we can fix this chair. Look at the crack. It's going all the way across that way, like a big letter T. So here's what the bottom of the chair looks like. Let's try to pop the plastic back into place first, and put some tape on the other side to try to hold it. So the duct tape should help these cracks stay in place while I weld it. Alright, so I used my screwdriver to loosen up this screw on my soldering iron. So this piece comes out. I need to make a piece that's flat like a flathead screwdriver. And this is what I'm going to use. It's already kind of flat, so I need to cut off some pieces. I'll probably make it about the same length so it fits in there just like this piece did. Alright, let's do it. Let's get out my vice grips because I don't have a vise. So that's going to be my flat end, kind of like a flathead screwdriver. I'm going to grind it down a little bit thinner than that, but I just needed to get that end piece off. Alright, let's cut off the end of this tool. Let's put on a grinding disc or sanding disc. I really don't want to grind it, I just want to sand it smoother. These grinding discs are great for that. Let's plug her back in. So now take a look at the tip. It's more like a flathead screwdriver, but not so sharp. Now let's take a coffee break. So I was going to take a screwdriver bit like this and just grind all around these angles and make this smooth to fit in there. I just thought it was a little bit short. But that's generally the shape I wanted to get. So here's our new tool. Check it out. And this was off of one of those old sockets, and it kind of plugs into some kind of a screwdriver, and I just didn't have the other part, so I might as well cut it up because I'm never going to use this. Now let's see if this fits in here. If it doesn't, we can adjust it. So it looks like we're just a little shy of getting in that hole. So I'm just going to have to take the sander and lightly go around this. Let's make it so it fits perfectly. Let's see if it fits now. Look at that, like butter. Get this to where we want it. I don't want it all the way in, but I want it deep enough so I have some room to play with it. And just use this set screw Crank it down. Stay where I put you. There we go. Alright, now before we get too crazy and start welding everything, I don't have any of the plastic weld staples that you put on the cracks, so I had a great idea. I'm going to use some paper clips. So I'll take these paper clips and I'll put these on the crack sideways and I'll melt them in. But I need to make one more thing for my soldering iron so I can do that. So I've got this bolt and I'm just going to shave off the roughness here and kind of round out the edges to make it a good tool to go ahead and heat those paper clips up and put them into the plastic. I'm just going to use the sanding disc. This is like a 60 grit sanding disc. So now there are no more marks on the head of this bolt and it's smoother on the edges. Just so it'll be easier to push along those paper clips. So take a look at this crack. It goes from here all the way through the reinforcements, across the other reinforcement, across the last reinforcement, and all the way to the end. The center crack goes all the way through these reinforcements and all the way down to the end here. But as you can see, I tried to make them as smooth as I can right now. That way when I put those paper clips in there, they'll hold the plastic straight. Alright, so the whole idea here is that the paper clip is going to lay along the crack. It's going to melt into the plastic and help hold these two pieces together. Kind of like if you put rebar in concrete. The rebar is going to hold the concrete and make it stronger. It'll be a little tricky when we get over here, but as long as I can get a piece of it into the cracks. I really don't want to go long ways like this, because there's not enough surface. Paper clips are pretty strong, so I'm going to go sideways. And they're cheap, so it doesn't matter how many I use. So my soldering iron has been warming up for the past couple of minutes. Let's put that flat end of that bolt that I smoothed out on the paper clip. Just going to use this bolt to help hold everything in place. So now the paper clip is melted into the chair. I'll show you some close-ups later. Let me do a few more. So just put the paper clip on it. This one's a little rounded because the chair is rounded in that part, so I'm just bending the paper clip a little bit, and you just move the tool back and forth on it just like you're ironing, and that heats up the plastic underneath, and that paper clip will sink into the plastic, and that's what you want. You want it to be in the plastic and then rub some of that plastic over the top. It's pretty easy. Alright, so let's check it out a little more close up. Just put a couple of, I guess we'll call them staples, in each crack. This is just my first step. After this, we're going to weld the seam. We'll go all along that crack and weld it with the other tip that I made. Putting this, these are going to brace these while I weld it, and also they'll stay in the plastic because I'm going to weld right through them, right over them, just to keep them in place. Alright, let me let my soldering iron cool down for a minute. I'm going to put on the other head and then we'll start welding. Alright, so I've changed my head. You can see by looking at it here, well, it's not really clear. There we go. Let it focus. You can see there's a, you can see it's flat. It's not sharp like a knife. It's flat like a screwdriver at the tip. And that's so when I weld it, I can drag the plastic towards me and then push it back some to make a good weld. So I don't want it sharp. I want it to be just a little bit blunt, but not too blunt. Let's weld a little bit and check it out. So you can see the technique is to pull the tip towards you and then push it back. It makes a nice little weld. It digs in deep and makes it strong. So I don't want to bore you with watching this whole thing, since this is a long crack to do. So I'll show you really quick what it looks like in regular speed. You really want to take your time when you're doing this. You don't want to press too hard and burn through your chair. I'm guessing this plastic is like 1/16 of an inch thick, so it's not that thick. I really don't want to push too hard into it. I just want to make sure I seal that crack all of this and put a good weld on it. Doesn't crack any more than it's all. Alright, so here's my welding job. Some of these spaces were hard to get into, but I think I got everything. So the trick here is to lay the zip tie right on the crack that you want to weld. Put your soldering iron right on top of the zip tie and drag it across as slowly as you can. You'll hear it sizzling, and when it melts, it sticks with the rest of the plastic underneath it. If you go too fast, it's just going to pop off. You've really got to go slowly. It's about an hour's worth of work to fix that. Let's flip it around and check. Get all these zip tie heads out of here. Look at, I got spider nests. Deal with those later. So actually this feels really solid. When I'm pressing down on the plastic, both pieces, both sides move, which means they're welded together well. Look at that, there is that unfixable crack. We just fixed it. But wait, it's not done yet. Let's check the other side. Let's take the tape off. Of course, you can still see the crack here. This one came out nice. That's perfectly flat. The edge is a little higher on this side than this side, slightly, and over here you can see a difference. So I'm going to take the other bolt that I had inside of my soldering iron, and I'm going to go over this and just flatten it out and smooth it out, and just slightly weld and melt those pieces together. Let's just get a real close-up so we can see what it's doing. So that crack was the part that was raised up really high, and I'm just smoothing it out. And then I'll sand everything and then paint it. So there's the crack. You can see it's raised up right here. This is the other spot it's raised up. So I want to melt that and make sure it goes back into the crack. And I'm just going to do this all along, and I can get some fine sandpaper to smooth everything out. That's why I made this bolt nice and smooth. Look at that, what a difference. So I sped this part up a little bit. Just check it out. This is really easy to do, and it makes it really smooth, and it takes any extra plastic sticking up and melts it and puts it right back into the crack. So after I do this, let's take a look at it, and then we'll flip it back over and we'll do one more thing to make it super strong. Can't even feel the crack anymore. I can just feel the edges of the plastic that I melted on it. Check that out. One chair repaired. So once again, let's check out the tools that I used. We've got a 60-watt soldering gun. I made this tip for it. You can see, oh there it is, still smoking all that plastic off. It's just a bolt head, and I got one that would fit inside. Let's unplug this sucker real quick. Here's the original soldering tip, so just take a look at this and measure, try to get the same size bolt head. And then remember my other tip that I made. Here's the tip that I made. This was taken off an old tool that I was never going to use. I cut it, ground it down, sharpened it, but not too sharp. Let's see with the better background here. You can see it's got a flat piece here, just like a flathead screwdriver, and lots of melted plastic on it, of course. And that worked great for welding. So I didn't have to buy any pieces. I didn't have to buy another soldering iron. I just used stuff I had sitting around the house. And that's it, guys. There's the video for today, how to plastic weld the impossible crack. Now we'll see how this holds up. I don't know if I'm gonna sit in it, but I'll let my wife sit in it. We'll see what happens. Alright guys, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you like watching anything that I do. DIY videos. I'm always out paddleboarding. There's my 15-foot inflatable paddleboard. Got a motor mounting bracket on it. I go out fishing, paddleboarding, island hopping, drinking, anything you can do at the paddleboard on the beach. I'm here in Cebu in the Philippines. Alright guys, I wanted to give you one more alternate way of doing this. You can use wire screen, steel screen, like this. So I've got some extra screen left over from another project I had, and I'm just going to cut it to fill the area that I want to cover up here. Now I did all of the paper clips there. That's one way of doing it, but I'll take a couple of the sections and I'll melt some screen into it. That's going to make a really good bond, especially since this chair is going to have a lot more weight on it. Alright, so a couple of minutes later, this is what you get. The screen should be mixed in with the plastic. There are probably a couple spots I can do better, but that's in there and that's solid now. So here's another idea I was playing around with. I was thinking of taking some PVC, just because I had an old piece of PVC pipe laying around, and it's a little flexible and it's strong. Let's see if we can melt this into a seam, just to see if this is another good product to use. Let's check it out. I'll just try to put some right in here and see what it looks like. Yeah, it looks like a viable option. Look at that. The PVC melts well, and it sticks and bonds with that other plastic nicely. It's not sliding around so much like the zip ties were. Seems to bond right away. The zip tie that I have on here doesn't melt so quickly, so it's going to take a little longer when I get to the zip tie part. Alright, let's test the chair with, 38 kilograms first, instead of my 105. Nice and slow, baby. Slowly, don't break my chair, I just welded it slowly. How does it feel? Lean back. So here's one other option. I have some 2-part marine epoxy. We can mix this and put it in there just to make sure it's going to hold strong. This will be the last thing I do. Alright, let's put some 2-part marine epoxy in here. It's going to bond to the screen and everything else. This is a pretty heavy duty chair and I did a good job welding it, but if I'm going to sit on it, or any of my friends are going to sit on it, I want to make sure that big T section is super strong. And that 2-part marine epoxy works for everything. And the key is when it dries, get it level, so I'm going to have to angle this chair to get it so it's flat and level. This will also give some support back to this brace that was broken. I'll even put some on this back side here. And move it around. And here's my tip. When you're done using your wife's chopstick to mix your epoxy, clean it off fast before that epoxy sets. Once this marine epoxy sets, you're gonna have to grind it off with the grinder to get it off. Now let it dry for a few hours and you're good to go. There it is, guys. Many ways to fix a cracked plastic chair.